Hey guys, and welcome to the Fish Room. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we're talking about Cyanobacteria, or blue green algae. It is the bane of existence of many an aquarist, as it's found in freshwater, saltwater, brackish water, really anywhere there's water, and it's one of the oldest living organisms on the planet. Now, it can lay dormant, it's thought, for a very long time, so it can show up seemingly out of nowhere. And I am dealing with it in my 75-gallon Lake Tanganyika birthday tank. This tank is relatively new, and the lights are new, and I'm not really quite sure exactly what caused it, but we're going to talk about some of the different things that are known to potentially cause it. But at the end of the day, we're going to adopt a few strategies in order to deal with it and to promote a less hospitable environment for the blue-green algae to thrive. Now, blue-green algae isn't really an algae, it's a bacteria, and it's important to understand that first. Now, it obtains its energy through light and photosynthesis. And as part of that process, it releases oxygen. So it's generally found in areas of our aquariums that have the least amount of flow. Now, this doesn't mean that the aquarium is necessarily dirty. In fact, a lot of times it's found in aquariums whose parameters through test kits read just fine. Though sometimes you'll find that it shows up opportunistically when your lighting's getting old, if you've just changed your lighting, if you have decaying plant matter, because it uptakes light that the plants can't, and that gives it a foothold, and then it can grow, and it shows up as sheets of blue-green slime on the surface of decorations, plants, substrate, glass in our freshwater aquarium. Now, the warmer things get, the more likely it is to spread, and the lower the flow, the more likely it is to spread. In my aquarium, I have it in the one quiet corner of my aquarium, and I've been managing it through manual removal, and that's fine. However, it is not getting rid of it, so we're going to take some additional steps today. There's many different treatments that people employ to deal with cyanobacteria, and one of the ones I see the most recommended is erythromycin. Now, personally, I only ever use antibiotics in my aquariums if I have absolutely no other choice and if it's directed by a veterinarian. Antibiotics not only take out the bad bacteria in our aquarium, but they take out the good bacteria, which means it can cause a mini cycle. Not only that, when we put our water into our sewer systems with antibiotics in them, we are part of the problem for antibiotic resistance. Often when we try and use antibiotics in our aquariums, we don't even really know what we're treating, and I just think it's a very bad idea. It also, destroys some of the good flora in our fish's digestive tract. So again, I really don't recommend the use of antibiotics unless you absolutely know what you're treating for, or under the supervision of a veterinarian. Some of the things that I've been doing for my aquarium is I've cut back on my feeding so that there's less nutrients available to the bacteria. I can't do a whole lot about my lighting, but it is brand new, and it's possible that the change from my T8 to the LED has given the cyanobacteria the ability to take hold. I've been physically removing it, and I'm going to add some more flow today. I'm going to put a hang-on back filter onto this aquarium to supplement the flow on that side of the aquarium in the hopes that it makes it unhospitable for this blue-green algae to really take hold and stay put. Now, it's important when you're dealing with something like blue-green algae and you're using equipment in your aquarium that you also clean and sterilize that equipment so you don't spread it to other aquariums. I like to use a bleach dip of 15 to 25%. I simply dip my nets and hoses in that, let them dry thoroughly, and then rinse them with warm to hot water. So let's take a look at the aquarium. We'll do a water change, we'll clear out some of the dead plant material, and we'll install the hang-on back filter. Now, my aquarium only has cyanobacteria in one small corner. And again, my test kits say that this tank is in great condition, no ammonia, no nitrite, and nitrate at about 5 parts per million. Those parameters are absolutely wonderful, but something is allowing this blue-green algae to take hold, and what I think it may be is the addition of these plants that aren't really thriving yet, so they're decaying a bit, and that this corner of the aquarium has very low flow. You can also see that I still have some diatoms in this aquarium, which is pretty common in a newer setup and will resolve in time. If you remember correctly, I added some nearite snails to help with this, and they've done a great job. Now, it's important to mention as well that there is not a critter in freshwater that eats blue-green algae. We must remove it and deal with the environment in order to make it less hospitable for this stuff to grow. We're going to start today by doing a water change and manual removal. Now, I recommend a water change of at least 30%. And I'm going to hover my siphon tube over the surface. You can see it comes off in sheets. So it's not that difficult to remove, but when you have an environment that allows this stuff to grow, it can spread in amazing amounts simply overnight. So I'll remove all that I see, and then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to remove any of the decaying plant matter and also clean the algae off the walls. I don't want to give this stuff any more nutrients than I have to. You can see it also accumulates to the glass. And again, it's very easy to remove, but it sure is ugly. Try and remove as much as I possibly can. You can see it's growing up the plant over here. Now this is, in my aquarium, this is a pretty minor infestation if we're being real. But I don't want it to continue, and I don't want this to be a problem in my aquarium. There are a bunch of chemicals on the market that a lot of people will use to treat this. I'm going to try a more natural approach first, simply by changing my filtration and aeration, cutting back on my feeding, and increasing my water changes to see if we can't get a hold of this so that it stops growing, and then we can, you know, if we have to in the future do something more, we will. It's often very tempting as aquarists to want to use a quick fix, but the reality with most algae or things like this bacterial bloom is that we have to figure out why it's occurring instead of just dealing with the end symptom. So I've cleaned my glass and vacuumed my substrate, and also vacuumed the rocks as well as inside some of the shells. Next, we're going to set up our hang-on back filter. Now, you could use any kind of increased aeration. You could use a power head, you could use a canister filter, but I want to put on a hang-on back because it'll be easy for me to remove later should I not want to continue using it. My water change of about 30% is complete. I just need to refill the aquarium. Now for the filter, I've chosen an aqua clear, and that's simply because in my experience over the past 15 to 20 years, these have been the most reliable. They're very easy to set up. They're not super loud, and they do a good job. I also like that it's very easy to customize the media. Filter comes with foam, ceramic rings, and carbon. I don't usually use the carbon. I save that for if I need to remove medications in the future, as well as a media bag that we put the ceramic rings into. So I've kept a bucket of my tank water here, and I'm going to rinse my rings in that just because they often have a lot of dust, and I don't want that going into the filter impeller or the little spinny thing that makes the filter pump water, because it makes it louder and it can also chew up the impeller. Now, one of the nice things about most power filters is that you can get replacement parts. So if something like the impeller were to become compromised, it's pretty easy and affordable to get a new one. This media bag, put the media in, pull this through, slide this over, and there we go. Now I do keep extra media like this running on the big boys tank as well as in some of my canisters for when I need to start new aquariums. Having cycled media really helps jumpstart things and reduce the stress to our fish in the long term. Because this aquarium is already fully cycled and I'm leaving the other filtration in, I'm simply going to add this filter and not worry about adding additional media. Hang on back filters are super simple. They literally hang on the frame of the aquarium, draw water in through the intake tube, through the filter media, and then it cascades back into the aquarium, providing splash and oxygen exchange while it's filtering. I'm going to mount this on the back of the aquarium, which is typical, though on some of my aquariums I have mounted them on the sides or the fronts or wherever I have space. You simply slide the intake tubes over here, pop it in place, and it has an adjustable flow. You can move this back and forth to limit the amount of water going through. I always set it to max. Then you put your media in. I usually put my sponge at the bottom and then my biologic material on top. And then if I wanted to, I could add some filter floss as well for polishing. I may add some of the Sarah stuff that I used on the Oscar tank to this at some point. I just have to see if I can find it. And then it's as simple as hanging it on the back and plugging it in. Going to refill the aquarium, and then I will fill up the back of the aqua clear and fire it up. I've positioned the filter so that the discharge is basically over the area that I've been having troubles with the cyanobacteria. You can see the discharge there. Now, if you were concerned about small fish or fry getting sucked into the filter, you can cover this intake tube with a sponge pre-filter or something like pantyhose. It's just important to remember to rinse that every time you do maintenance so it doesn't get occluded. So the plan is to cut back on my feeding. I've been feeding twice a day because these are younger fish, but obviously I'm providing some sort of nutrient for this bacteria to thrive. So I'm going to cut back to once a day, which will maintain the fish's body condition, though it may slow their growth a bit. I'm also going to continue my 30% water changes once or twice a week. And just keep an eye on things. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of the updates. Again, the water parameters in this aquarium were absolutely perfect, but something was giving that blue green algae the ability to take hold, whether it's the change in the lighting to LED from T8, whether it's the addition of all the rock that was wild collected, or it was the areas of low flow. I'm going to do a multifaceted approach to manage this problem. If all else fails, we will resort to chemical media, but the hope is that I will not need to do that simply by taking this multifaceted natural approach. And again, I avoid antibiotics at all costs, so that would not be my solution regardless. Stay tuned to find out what happens with this aquarium.